From the very beginning of time, God has been present to every person in every place. Said another way, throughout all time, God has been present to every person in every place. Our minds struggle to understand this, so I feel it needs to be stated plainly that God is present to us in all times and places. Our minds are fixed on our notion of time and place, and so we struggle to imagine a God that can be present to us even as we experience it. And even before Jesus comes and walks among us, Jesus is present to us in every time and place, every age, every generation. And the prophets seem to know it oh so clearly. And they know that it's cause for rejoicing. As is any moment we recognize God's presence among us. And so throughout the scriptures we have many passages that encourage us to rejoice and know that God is near. Even as we anticipate the coming of a Savior and Messiah, we know that even while we wait, God is near. And lest we rest on this alone, we're reminded of the struggles that we face because the Israelites, those waiting for the coming of the Messiah, knew that God was coming and that God was present with them, and so it sometimes gets us in trouble. Maybe you have this experience elsewhere in your life where you have been so confident, so sure of a thing, so certain that you stepped forward boldly and blundered into a thing that you didn't even know was there. Maybe you've had this experience even in your own church life where you were so confident that God was with you that you overstepped maybe where you were supposed to be a bit and had to step back. I believe this is what John the Baptist is confronting in the wilderness. He's saying, if you're simply here to claim that you have Abraham as your ancestor, not so different than saying we've got the grace of Jesus. While it's true, doesn't mean that it doesn't require something of us. And so they've overstepped. They think they've got the ticket. They think they've got the fast pass. They're ready. And they're ready to move. It's like when we know that we're going to be checked in on, we make sure the desk is clean. It's like when we know mom or dad is coming down the hall, we jump to and make sure we're doing whatever it is we were supposed to be doing. It was said that when Northern Ireland was in turmoil, still is in some sense, but in the height of some of that turmoil, the IRA would plant a bomb in a shopping center, and then they would do something kind of unusual. They'd call the police and say that you had 5 minutes to clear the building. So not only were they going to be destructive, they were trying to kind of excuse themselves perhaps from the loss of life, but more than that, they're inciting panic. Maybe overstepping the bounds of what they were called to do. At the same time, there was a story that circulated through Northern Ireland that one of the members of the IRA went to the pearly gates expecting entrance, perhaps, and St. Peter came out with a great volume and was examining it to find the absence of the individual's name. He said, your name's not in here. You were in the IRA. The member of the IRA stood before St. Peter and said, you've got it all wrong. I'm not here to get in. You've got 5 minutes to get out. If we've come here in the expectation that it will grant us passage into heaven, we've missed the point. If we come here so that we might find ourselves a fast pass, we're missing the point. Advent is a time when we are reminded that God is not waiting for us in heaven, that God is near us, and indeed it is cause for us to rejoice. It's cause for us to rejoice in God's presence as we experience it in this life, but also to be aware that God isn't waiting in heaven, that God has broken free, that God has come to visit us, and God is coming again. And so this Advent season, perhaps our call is to remember that God is present to us in every time and place, to every person, even when we can't feel God's presence, even when we struggle, perhaps all the more so, God is present to us. God is our defender. God is watching over us. God will lead us towards a peace and love that is everlasting. And as we rejoice knowing that God is near this Advent season, perhaps we have a call in it just as John the Baptist called those who gathered with him in the wilderness into action. Perhaps we're called this Advent season to find someone who is hungry and to literally feed them. Do you have enough food to do that? Perhaps our call this Advent season is to open our closets and look to see where we might have 2 coats or more, and take one of them out, or all but one of them out, and find someone who is cold and give it to them. Perhaps our call this Advent season is to seek out someone who is lost and hurting or lonely, and sit and be present to them and listen on behalf of Christ. Whatever your particular call may be this Advent season, know that Christ is near, that God is present with you. Take heart, rejoice, but go boldly and represent this Christ whose love you have known by being present to others.